Natural disasters are the ultimate reminder of the power of nature. They are terrifying, destructive, and often leave behind a trail of devastation that is hard to comprehend. From massive earthquakes to catastrophic tsunamis, the history of our planet has been shaped by these violent events. In this video, we will dive into the top 5 most dangerous natural disasters in history, events that not only changed the landscapes but also claimed thousands of lives. Are you ready to explore the darkest moments in Earth's history? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe as we venture into the world of extreme forces of nature. The 1976 Tangshan Earthquake. On the morning of July 28, 1976, a devastating natural disaster struck the Chinese city of Tangshan, located in northeastern China. In a matter of seconds, the lives of over 1 million people were shattered as a powerful earthquake, measuring 7.5 on the Richter scale, leveled the entire city. This tragic event, which remains one of the deadliest earthquakes in history, is often remembered not just for its catastrophic loss of life but for the resilience shown by the survivors and the changes it brought to China's approach to disaster preparedness. At 3:42 a.m., while most of the city's 1 million inhabitants were still asleep, the ground beneath them shook violently. The earthquake lasted just 23 seconds but left behind a trail of unimaginable destruction. Entire buildings collapsed, and most of Tangshan, including its infrastructure, was reduced to rubble. The city's hospitals, schools, and factories were all flattened. In the aftermath, survivors had to navigate through piles of debris, often in complete darkness, as most of the city's power was cut off. The loss was immediate and overwhelming. The official death toll from the earthquake is reported to be around 242,000, but the true number could be even higher. Tens of thousands of people were trapped under the rubble, and there was little to no rescue infrastructure in place to help. The lack of modern earthquake-resistant buildings and the suddenness of the disaster meant that many did not have the chance to escape. Thousands of children, elderly people, and workers in the city's industries were among the victims. The destruction was so severe that rescue teams had difficulty reaching the affected areas. Despite the severity of the event, Tangshan's residents exhibited incredible resilience. Those who survived the initial collapse scrambled to find each other, offering help to those trapped beneath the wreckage. In the days that followed, survivors dug through the rubble with their bare hands, working together to save those they could. Local medical teams and volunteers mobilized to provide first aid, while the government began coordinating massive relief efforts. Though the response to the earthquake was hindered by the scale of the disaster, China's collective spirit helped the community begin the process of rebuilding. The 1976 Tangshan earthquake is often remembered for the immediate devastation it caused and the sheer scale of the destruction. However, it also highlighted the need for better disaster preparedness. Prior to the earthquake, China lacked sufficient infrastructure for responding to such large-scale natural disasters, and as a result, the government made significant changes in how it managed disaster relief and recovery. Building codes were revised, and the government began investing more in seismic research and emergency response teams. In the years that followed, China adopted stricter building regulations and implemented better disaster management practices, and it created early warning systems to detect seismic activity before it could cause such widespread damage. The lessons learned from the Tangshan earthquake laid the foundation for improved safety measures across the country, and they continue to guide China's approach to disaster preparedness today. The earthquake also had a deep social and psychological impact. For many survivors, the memories of the disaster remained with them for years. The traumatic experience of losing loved ones and witnessing such widespread destruction marked a turning point in the lives of those who survived. However, it also reinforced the unity of the Chinese people and their ability to rebuild even after the most devastating of events. The 1906 San Francisco earthquake. On April 18, 1906, at 5:12 a.m., the city of San Francisco was forever changed by one of the most devastating natural disasters in history. In a split second, a massive earthquake struck with a magnitude of 7.9 on the Richter scale. It was a force so powerful that it caused the ground to shake violently for about 45 seconds, sending shockwaves through the city, ripping buildings from their foundations, shattering windows, and tearing apart streets. The aftermath of this earth-shattering event was nothing short of catastrophic. But the real horror didn't end with the shaking. The earthquake set off a series of devastating fires that raged uncontrollably across the city. As gas lines ruptured and electrical systems failed, flames quickly engulfed entire neighborhoods. With fire brigades overwhelmed and limited access to water, the city was left at the mercy of the inferno. For days, the city burned. Buildings that had once been symbols of San Francisco's prosperity were reduced to ashes. Entire districts were wiped off the map, and people were left to flee with nothing but the clothes on their backs. In just a few hours, an entire city was brought to its knees. Thousands of people were killed, and more than 250,000 were left homeless. The city's infrastructure, roads, and bridges were completely destroyed, leaving San Francisco in a state of total disarray. The human cost was devastating, but the destruction of the city's heart, its business district, cultural landmarks, and homes, was unimaginable. It was a disaster that shook the world and left a scar on the city that would take decades to heal. Yet, even in the face of such unimaginable destruction, San Francisco's resilience shone through. The city did not stay down for long. In the months following the disaster, citizens and officials came together, working tirelessly to rebuild. The sense of unity and determination to restore the city was palpable. What seemed like an impossible task turned into one of the most impressive urban recovery stories of the 20th century. Within just a few years, San Francisco had not only recovered but had emerged stronger, more determined, and ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The 1906 earthquake didn't just change the city. It transformed the way the world understood earthquakes. It was a wake-up call to the destructive power of seismic activity and the vulnerability of cities located along fault lines. This event led to significant advancements in seismology, and new building codes were put into place to ensure that future structures could withstand the forces of nature. The scientific community, shaken by the disaster, turned its focus to understanding the causes and effects of earthquakes, setting the stage for better predictions and prevention methods in the years that followed. San Francisco's story is one of survival against all odds. While the physical scars left by the earthquake remain in the city's history, the spirit of resilience and rebuilding continues to inspire. Today, San Francisco stands as a city rebuilt, a testament to human strength and perseverance. The memory of that fateful day serves as a constant reminder of the power of nature, but also of our ability to overcome the most devastating of forces. The 1906 San Francisco earthquake was not just an event in history. It was a turning point that forever changed how we understand the earth beneath our feet and our ability to withstand its fury. It taught us that no matter how advanced we become, nature will always remind us of its unpredictable power. And perhaps that's the most valuable lesson of all. The 1815 eruption of Mount Tambora. In the spring of 1815, the world witnessed one of the most powerful and catastrophic volcanic eruptions in recorded history. Mount Tambora, located on the island of Sumbawa in Indonesia, unleashed its fury, sending ash and gases into the atmosphere, causing one of the most widespread global climate events ever recorded. The eruption of Mount Tambora would go down in history not only for the sheer scale of destruction it caused, but also for the far-reaching consequences that would unfold in the years following. When Tambora erupted in April 1815, it was a volcanic explosion of unimaginable proportions. The eruption released an estimated 100 times the amount of ash as the eruption of Mount St. Helens in 1980. It sent massive plumes of volcanic ash high into the stratosphere, and the fallout would be felt across the globe. The eruption caused massive devastation across the island of Sumbawa, killing tens of thousands of people in the immediate vicinity. Entire villages were buried under layers of ash, and the devastation was so severe that many survivors had nowhere to turn for help. But the impact of Mount Tambora's eruption didn't stop with the destruction of life and property. The ash and gases that spewed into the atmosphere didn't just stay in the local region. They spread across the globe. The eruption caused what is now known as the year without a summer. The immense amount of ash and sulfur dioxide injected into the upper atmosphere caused temperatures to drop worldwide. The cooling effect of the eruption caused widespread crop failures and food shortages across the northern hemisphere, with regions from the United States to Europe experiencing unusually cold temperatures during the summer months of 1816. Farmers saw their crops fail due to the colder-than-normal temperatures, leading to a devastating famine. The summer of 1816, which should have been a time of abundance, turned into a season of hardship and hunger. In the United States and Europe, there were reports of snow in June, and crops such as corn, wheat, and potatoes were wiped out. People faced widespread hunger, and many died from the resulting famine. The eruption also caused significant economic damage, particularly in agricultural regions that were dependent on harvests for income. Beyond the immediate environmental and agricultural impacts, the eruption of Mount Tambora had a profound influence on global history and culture. The cooling effects caused by the eruption led to crop failures, starvation, and widespread suffering, but they also indirectly influenced culture and the arts. One of the most notable cultural effects was seen in 1816 when Lord Byron, Mary Shelley, and other writers gathered near Lake Geneva in Switzerland. The unseasonably cold weather kept them indoors, leading Mary Shelley to write her famous novel Frankenstein. The harsh conditions brought on by the eruption seemed to spark creativity and inspire works of art, literature, and even music. The eruption of Mount Tambora is a stark reminder of the power of nature and its ability to affect the course of human history. While it primarily impacted the regions surrounding Indonesia, the global consequences were far-reaching and devastating. The eruption serves as a warning of the unforeseen consequences that can arise from natural disasters and the vulnerability of our planet to forces beyond our control. Even today, scientists continue to study the eruption to better understand volcanic activity and its effects on global climate, agriculture, and human society. In the years that followed, Mount Tambora's eruption shaped our understanding of the interconnectedness of our world. It reminded us that a single event in one corner of the Earth could have profound effects on the entire planet. The eruption was a turning point in the study of volcanoes and climate change, and it helped lay the groundwork for future research on the global impact of natural disasters. The 1815 eruption of Mount Tambora may have occurred more than 2 centuries ago, but its legacy continues to remind us of the immense power of nature and the delicate balance of life on Earth. Whether through its direct impact on the environment or its far-reaching cultural effects, Tambora's eruption remains one of the most significant natural events in human history. The 1931 China floods. The 1931 China floods stand as one of the deadliest and most devastating natural disasters in history, claiming millions of lives and wreaking havoc on the country's infrastructure and agriculture. This catastrophic event, which lasted for several months during the summer of 1931, is considered by many to be the most deadly flood in recorded history, not only due to the number of lives lost but also because of its far-reaching economic and environmental impacts. The floods were triggered by a combination of factors. In the summer of 1931, an unusually high amount of rainfall, coupled with the melting of snow in the mountains, caused the Yangtze, Yellow, and Huai rivers to overflow their banks. The situation was worsened by the failure of river embankments that had been poorly maintained and the extensive deforestation in the area, which led to increased soil erosion and a reduction in the land's natural ability to absorb water. As the rivers swelled, entire regions in central and eastern China were submerged, with more than 3,000 cities and towns affected. The flooding displaced millions of people from their homes, leaving them stranded in makeshift camps without food or medical supplies. People who survived the initial deluge found themselves fighting against the elements, as the floods created an environment conducive to the spread of waterborne diseases like cholera, dysentery, and typhoid. These diseases claimed more lives than the floodwaters themselves, and with insufficient medical supplies, many victims were left without treatment. The human toll of the 1931 China floods was staggering. It is estimated that between 1 million and 4 million people died as a result of the floods, with the vast majority dying from drowning, disease, and malnutrition. Many people who had already been impoverished due to the economic conditions of the time were left with no resources, further exacerbating the situation. The floodwaters also destroyed farmland and vital infrastructure, severely hampering the ability of the country to feed its population. In addition to the immediate devastation, the economic effects of the flood were felt for years. The destruction of crops, livestock, and infrastructure led to food shortages and a crippled economy. The agricultural sector, which was the backbone of China's economy at the time, was severely disrupted. The flooding also caused widespread disruption to trade, with transportation routes completely cut off in many areas. The economy of China, already suffering from the effects of the Great Depression and political instability, was pushed into further crisis. The Chinese government's response to the floods was met with mixed results. Although the government made attempts to provide relief to the affected regions, the scale of the disaster was too large for any single response to be effective. Aid was insufficient, and relief efforts were delayed due to the ongoing political struggles within China. The government's failure to adequately respond to the crisis led to widespread public dissatisfaction and contributed to the instability that would later lead to the rise of the Chinese Communist Party. The floods of 1931 were also a major turning point in China's understanding of water management and flood control. In the years following the disaster, the Chinese government took measures to improve the nation's flood prevention systems, such as strengthening embankments, constructing dams, and developing better flood forecasting systems. Despite these efforts, the region remained vulnerable to floods, and subsequent decades would see more devastating flooding events. The legacy of the 1931 China floods is not just in the lives lost but also in the profound impact they had on Chinese society and government. The floods brought to light the inadequacy of the government's response and highlighted the need for improved disaster preparedness and infrastructure. The event also marked a turning point in the development of China's flood control strategies, which have since been recognized as essential for protecting millions of people from the dangers posed by the country's rivers. The 2004 Indian Ocean Tsunami. On December 26, 2004, one of the deadliest natural disasters in recorded history struck the Indian Ocean. A massive earthquake measuring 9.19.3 on the Richter scale occurred off the coast of Sumatra, Indonesia, sending shockwaves through the region. The earthquake triggered a series of powerful tsunamis, each wave more devastating than the last, wiping out entire coastal communities and claiming over 230,000 lives across 14 countries. The tsunami's impact was felt as far as the east coast of Africa, with waves traveling at speeds of up to 500 miles per hour. In Indonesia, particularly in Aceh province, the damage was catastrophic. Entire towns were washed away in an instant, and the already fragile infrastructure was destroyed. Sri Lanka, Thailand, India, and the Maldives were also devastated, with thousands of lives lost and whole villages submerged underwater. Popular tourist destinations in Thailand, including Phuket, were ravaged, leaving both locals and tourists stranded and desperate for rescue. People who had been enjoying their holidays found themselves in the midst of a living nightmare, trapped by the floodwaters, with no warning or time to react. In addition to the loss of life, the tsunami left millions displaced, many without homes, food, or access to clean water. The scale of the disaster was overwhelming, and survivors were left to deal with the physical and emotional aftermath of the destruction. The humanitarian crisis that followed the tsunami was global in scale, with nations around the world offering aid, supplies, and support to those affected. The international community rallied, and millions of dollars in relief funds were donated to help rebuild the devastated regions. Despite the quick response from governments, humanitarian organizations, and volunteers, the road to recovery was long. In some areas, entire villages had to be rebuilt from scratch. The damage to infrastructure, along with the widespread loss of life, made recovery efforts extremely difficult and slow. It was a stark reminder of the vulnerability of coastal communities in the face of natural disasters, especially when these events strike without warning. The 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami also had a lasting impact on how the world prepares for and responds to natural disasters. In its aftermath, nations across the globe, particularly those located in areas at risk for similar events, began to develop and improve tsunami warning systems. The event highlighted the need for early detection and rapid response to prevent future loss of life. Thanks to the lessons learned from this tragedy, there have been significant advancements in disaster preparedness and early warning systems, saving countless lives in subsequent events. Today, the memory of the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami serves as both a reminder of the raw power of nature and the resilience of the human spirit. While the disaster left scars on the affected regions, the recovery and rebuilding efforts were a testament to the strength of the survivors and the compassion of people worldwide. This event is a reminder of our vulnerability, but also of our ability to come together in times of crisis. The legacy of the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami continues to shape how we prepare for and respond to natural disasters, helping to ensure that future generations are better equipped to handle the unpredictable forces of nature. From raging tsunamis to earth-shattering quakes and unforgiving floods, these disasters are not just tales of destruction. They're stories of human survival, resilience, and the will to rebuild. Each tragedy left behind scars, but also lessons that have shaped how we prepare for the future. If these stories moved you, if you believe it's important to remember and learn from the past, give this video a like, share it with others, and subscribe for more powerful moments from history. Let's keep the memory of these events alive, not in fear, but in awareness, because understanding the past helps us protect our future.